Hey YouTube. So what we have here is about 10 pounds of ground beef, and I am going to can it all. The way I'm going to can it is a little bit different from the normal, and it's definitely not ball certified or USDA certified, but it has been done for at least 100 years, and it's also been done by people all over the world. And that is what they call rebel canning, and some people also call it Amish canning. So that is basically just, I'm going to water bath can these, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. My first step is to pre-cook this. It's going to be a hot pack method. I'm going to pre-cook all this ground beef so it's in that crumbly format. So when I do go to use it, it's already crumbled for me. So all 10 pounds are in the pot cooking up, and we'll come back when it's fully browned. I'm not really much of a Walmart shopper, but I found that the olive oil at the Walmart is much cheaper than everywhere else. Olive oil prices have gone really, really high in the past year or so. So I went in there to buy the olive oil, and on my way past the produce, I noticed that these bags, I think they call them stew packs, stuff that you would put in a stew, I guess, rutabaga, carrots, cabbage. These things were on markdown. So it's normally like $4 a bag or something. Yeah, normally $3.97. So it was marked down. I thought I would just grab a few of these bags and turn them into soup at home. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to clean this up, chop it up, and get it ready to make my stews. I'll be right back. Okay, so all of the ground beef has been fully cooked. I've got my cabbage and carrots fully chopped and washed. I will be using my rutabaga, but only canning those separately because not everyone in my family would like stew with rutabaga in it, so I will keep that separate. But the carrots and the cabbage are gonna go for the stew, and for the most part, I'll be canning just ground beef. So this is how I'm gonna do it. So again, this is gonna be water bath canned, and to repeat, do your own research because this is not the official method of canning for meats. I'm going to be water bath canning this ground beef in my jars for 3 hours once the water has come to a full rolling boil. With the hot pack method, you're basically doing hot to hot. So whatever's in your jars that you're canning is going to be hot, and it's going into hot water. If you're doing cold pack, which I have done in the past, cold pack for the ground beef would be if I just took the ground beef out of the package raw, put it inside of my jars, and canned it that way. I've done that before. The good side of it is that it's very quick and simple. You don't have to pre-cook. The downside of it is that meat ends up becoming more like a big lump inside of the jars, and it's almost like a meatloaf without being meatloaf, and so you have to kind of loosen up the ground beef after the fact. I'm gonna do it this way because I really more prefer the idea of having it already ground when I dump it out of the jar after it's been water bath canned. So hot pack is going to be hot jars, hot food, and hot water in the bath. The jars there's two schools of thought on this. Because of the fact that your jars are going to be boiling for 3 hours straight, it stands to reason that your jar lids and your actual jars are going to be sterilized as the food cooks. So some people might decide to water bath can without sterilizing their jars and just having clean washed jars, clean and washed in hot soapy water and rinsed, and then putting the food in and then water bath canning it, expecting it to be fully disinfected that way. What I did this time, and what I've done in the past anyways, is wash the jars, put them in the oven at 350 for about 10 or 15 minutes. That also will sterilize your jars for you. And for the lids, you can put them in hot boiling kettle water, and that will sterilize your lids as well. These were brand new jars, so this is why I sterilized them. In the future, I probably will do the same method as what a lot of Amish people do, which is just have clean jars, clean lids, and put the food inside and let it disinfect itself while it's boiling for 3 hours straight in the water. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these jars out and assemble them. So I'm gonna be making soup in the first 4 jars, and then the last 4 jars will be just ground beef for this batch. Just using about 2 or 3 tablespoons of shredded cabbage. So as you can see, I filled them up pretty full. From the side view, you can see I filled it up past the fill line, and that's because you can see here the carrot and the cabbage is going to cook down quite nicely and it's going to drop. So this is the neckline here. It can be filled a little higher for the fact that this is going to sink. I'm going to go ahead now. You can add whatever seasonings you like. I'm going to go ahead and add my salt and garlic. That's all I'm adding here. For the soup, I'll do a teaspoon, and for the ground beef, I will just do a half a teaspoon of Himalayan salt. It's really up to taste for you. And I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder to each jar. At this point, you can go ahead and add water, or if you have liquid from the cooking of your meat, you can add that because it's got, a bit more flavor in it. The fats are okay. I went with lean ground beef and extra lean ground beef. I would recommend that, but the fats that are in the meat are okay when they're jarred. That's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this liquid into my jars, and then I will top it up with boiling kettle water. You can sort of see here at right about this point that at that line is where the stewing water of the ground beef went up to on the soup. This one went up a little higher, and these ground beefs are just about almost at the top. So in all of these, I'm going to make sure that they're topped up with the kettle water. Oops, can you see that? Okay. So all of them are topped up with the water. And now I'm going to wipe off the lids. That's really important. I will use a clean cloth with hot water, and I can use hot boiling water, or some people use vinegar on a tea towel, or it's vinegar on a hand towel, or vinegar on a paper towel. It doesn't really matter, just as long as all around the lids have been wiped off to keep any debris or any food particles off of that when you're about to put the lids on. Or else it could affect the seal on the actual jars. I've done the wiping of the jars all around the rims, and they're ready for their lids now. So as I'm lidding this, I'll just explain. I have a canner already, but the reason I'm not using it is because, number one, I feel like it's a game changer to be able to water bath can this meat. It's a lot simpler, and also because I've misplaced the weight for my, so there's the lid going on, and then I'm just going to put this on. When you tighten these jars, it's going to be finger tight, meaning you're not going to use two hands, you're not going to use like all of your fingers to tighten the jar. You're just going to use two fingers and tighten it. I've got the phone in my hand, so I'll go back and tighten it a little more than that, but it doesn't have to be super tight for closing up these jars. So I'll put the lids on. So as I was saying, I'm missing the weight for my pressure canner. So that is why I'm not pressure canning today. Also, I feel like it's a lot easier, and it's a game changer for people who may or may not have a pressure canner and don't have those hundreds of dollars to shell out. All you need is a really deep pot, and you can can pretty much anything in the water bath method. So this method, like I said, has not been approved by modern day canning associations and all that stuff, but it's been used by many people from different walks of life for many, many years. So I have no problem doing it this way. I'm fully confident that it will work, and it can last on the shelves for 2 to 5 years. Some people say even longer, 7, 10 years, but I'm really just aiming for a year or two on the counter in a nice, decent temperature, cool, dark place. I have a basement, but also I will be storing some of this stuff on the main floor in just a place that's relatively cool, not a lot of light shining into it. I'll go ahead and put these in the water bath. So this water's gotten a little hot. I can see it's starting to have a rolling boil, and that's a little too hot for me to be putting these jars in, especially because I'll put it on the screen. I completely forgot that I don't know where I forgot that I've misplaced my thingy for putting jars in. So I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of cold water to this just so that it's not at a full rolling boil as I'm adding the jars. My heat is on fully high right now, and as the water comes up to a boil around the jars, I will turn it down to a medium high and let it continue to boil. The key here is for it to boil for a straight 3 hours from the time you see a rolling boil. So it doesn't count. If it takes an hour to get to a rolling boil once you've got your jars in, then it takes an hour. That doesn't count towards your 3 hours. As soon as you start to see a rolling boil, that is when your timer starts for 3 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in. Also, my canner did originally come with like some circular trays. I'll show that in the picture too. One for the bottom and one for the middle when you're piling up 2 rows of jars. I don't know where that is, so I am just going to put a tea towel at the bottom of the pot and then in between the next layer. And that's just so that the jars don't jiggle around too much and cause them to bang around with each other. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, this is probably terrible advice, but the Amish do not debubble. Many of these Amish, I should say, the Amish, there's an Amish book I bought, and you know, they were very much saying that their traditional old ways of where they were raised were totally wrong. And so, you know, educated Amish that go to school, they may say that water bath canning meat, for example, is wrong, but their ancestors, their descendants, and also people, many Amish who keep the traditional ways, don't know much about what we're talking about when they say, when they're told that they can't water bath canned meat. They've been doing it for many, many years. And in the same vein, they also do not generally debubble as religiously as the more modern instructions tell us to. So, I mean, there's been times where I have accidentally forgotten to debubble and nothing's happened. So I am debubbling just to be official here, and debubbling, in case anybody doesn't know, is just taking out any stray bubbles by just running a knife down the side of the jar, taking out any air bubbles that might be trapped inside of the jar. This is the second batch here, so that's another 8 jars I'm about to put in the canner. And so I just put the 2 cheese graters underneath and held my hands together and then gently lifted and then placed it into the bath canner. So that's just a tip if somebody's pressed and doesn't have what they need. Okay, so here we have it. This is what a rolling boil looks like, okay? This is the most important part. To make sure that this is actually canning the way it's supposed to, you need to make sure that the water is at a full rolling boil, not a rumble, not like when you have those little tiny bubbles coming to the surface, but a full boil like the way that you see it here. And that's it. So all I'm gonna do is just wait 3 hours from this time, because it started now, and I'll come back when 3 hours is up. Pouring a little bit of vinegar in the water. I should add a couple tablespoons of vinegar into the water. Helps the jars to stay nice and clear on the outside. Those who go by the book say that the water level needs to be at least an inch or so over the top of these jars. By the Amish is to have the water level at the neck of the food. So basically exactly where the food is where you want the water to be at. Some people think it causes spillage if you put water over the top of the lid, and some people don't. I have put water, I filled it up to the top, a little bit over, and I'm gonna let this boil down. As this boils down for 3 hours, you can imagine at some point the water level is gonna reduce a bit. I'm not gonna worry about it until it gets below the neck. If it starts to go below the neck, then I will just add more water. And you want to make sure you add boiling water so that it doesn't interfere with the rolling boil that you've got going on for your 3 hours. So here I'm going to top up the water from the kettle into the water bath. You can see here the levels going down, so I just continue to add water as it goes down. Because I'm adding boiling water, the water is continuing to boil. So now they're finished, and this is what they look like. I ended up overall with 8 soup stews and 8 canned jars of ground beef. So you can see it's like loosely ground beef, it's fully cooked and ready to go. As these were cooling, the tops were pinging. They're making this pinging sound, and that's when the lids are actually creating their final seal. You will hear this sort of pinging sound as you take them out of the hot water, and as they start to cool down. This has cooled down completely now. I'm just checking to make sure that all these lids have sealed and that there's no bounce back, and that's how you know that all your jars have sealed. So hopefully this was helpful to you, and thank you for watching, and God bless you. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one.